First, I want to welcome everyone to our first of our series. I know yesterday was a big milestone for all of us. I, along with my sister, sit in the same situation that you guys do. My parents lost their homes, my sisters lost their homes, and so my name is Freddie Sage. I'm an Altadena resident since 1973, 51 years. My kids were at Elliott and at Altadena on my days Wildfires. My family has been spread throughout Altadena all these years. We know nothing other than Altadena, and we couldn't see ourselves living anywhere else than Altadena. And that's why we felt putting together the rebuild workshops was going to be quite important. We come from a family who has built buildings and homes in the past, and then when you become a trauma survivor, all of a sudden trying to make decisions such as the highly complex things that you're used to, the normalcy of making decisions, the ability to move forward seems so complex, so many questions. And so we wanted to come up with something to start to break that ice, to start to give you a little bit of information, to start to lead you into a place. And we thought workshop 101. We're gonna have some incredible experts who will be able to provide some incredible insight. And I want to thank you all for being here. And I'd first like to thank Doug Boxer, who opened up his offices for us. He's been an incredible partner. Doug and LAFJ have supported Altadena Coalition in all of our events. They've supported us with interim housing symposiums. They've supported us in all kinds of events. And I'd like to thank Doug for having us here.
Sure. Thank you, Freddie. I'm honored to call you my friend. There's a guy here who has dedicated his life subsequent to January 7th to make sure you all have the information you need to try and get your lives. I see some communications of the crowd. Thank you for being here. LA Fire Justice is a coalition of lawyers, community outreach people, and experts that represent folks who have been damaged by the Eaton fire. This is not the first time we've done this. We've been in communities across California and all the way over to Hawaii. This is my 10th wildfire. And all I can tell you is I'm sorry that we are meeting under these circumstances. I spent a good portion of my career in Los Angeles. I did not live in Pasadena or Altadena. I actually lived in West LA and worked for the mayor of Los Angeles at the time that I lived here. And I was, however, exposed to this area at that time, working for the mayor. I did intergovernmental affairs, and I interfaced with the mayor of Pasadena and the other mayors of the 88 cities in LA County. And I know what a special place this is, and I'm not going to say was, because I believe that Altadena will be reborn. Because of the hard work that you all are doing and Freddie is doing, and our collection of lawyers and law firms who are representing people who have suffered through this terrible, terrible event. So I want to welcome you here. Make this your home. This is a safe place. It always will be. If you have any questions whatsoever, we are here to help answer those questions. You're going to get a ton of information. I also spent 7 years on the planning commission in my community, so I know a little bit about rebuilding, not after a disaster of this magnitude. However, I've been in a lot of these communities and seen the challenges that each one of you will face, and we'll face them together, and we will overcome them together, and that is why I appreciate what Freddie is doing so great. I'm assuming you want to introduce Chris.
Absolutely.
Okay. So again, welcome. I'm going to be here and absorb all this information. It's going to be a lot, and we're going to be doing this 3 more times, I believe, right? So stick with us, and we will be here for you. And thanks again.
Thank you, Doug. And as much as I thought I was an Altadena legend, they bring on this guy who is a super legend, and actually the city councilman, and now he's the CEO here. They brought him in to ensure that the rebuild effort goes the way it is.
especially for wildfires, and it's an honor to call my friend Chris Holden.
Thank you. First of all, I want to just give a major shout out to Freddie, because what all of us, obviously many of you have gone through back on January 7th, is a horrific type of event that you never want to have happen to you. But when things like that happen, it's now moving forward to get past the trauma and look at how we can invest in bringing back Pasadena that was impacted in Sierra Madre in the Eaton Canyon area. And I gotta give the reason I say a shout out to Freddie is because, a lot of times we can become overcome by circumstances and situations. And then the choice is, what do we do to move forward? And what Freddie decided to do was that he was going to create a coalition to work with the community to say, let's start to move forward. Let's start to look at how we can address this issue and get real answers, real time, in terms of what's being shared with us and what we're seeing on the ground. Real answers, which some of those answers haven't come yet, in terms of how communities are notified in evacuations. Real answers that haven't come yet around contamination in soil. Much of which I'm hoping you're going to get a lot of good information here today and through this series that Freddie was very much a part of. And so, as a proud member of the leadership of LA Fire Justice, and as a longtime resident of Pasadena, and certainly affiliated with Altadena over my time in the State Assembly, it's a pleasure to be here with you, letting you know we're all locking arms together. This organization has a very specific focus, and that is to hold Southern California Edison accountable for the damage that's done to the entire area of Altadena and surrounding communities. And it's our job to work with you to make sure that you are brought back to whole, or as close to whole as possible. And so part of the process is understanding what next looks like and rebuilding, and I hope many of you will be able to rebuild. I think that it's important to understand how to demystify that process, but also make sure that we understand where there's a need to put some pressure behind the governmental agencies that have responsibility over permitting, and that have responsibilities in order to make the process smooth and easy for you, that they're meeting your expectations. And so today creates a first step in some of the basics, and I appreciate again Freddie's determination to not sit still, but to be part of the active mindset to really be out there locking arms with the community to make sure that when the rebuild happens, it's happening in a timely manner, and it's happening to make sure life easier, not more complicated. So thank you for being here. I got a shout out to the Jacobs. I've known them forever, and I'm so glad to see the two of you here. And I grew up around them. So it's really a pleasure to see them here, and many others who I've known for a very long time. So thank you for being here, and we're looking forward to a good outcome. And just know that we're here to lock arms with you to be a part of helping to create a solution for you long term as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So we've got some great info, so I'm gonna speed through who I am. Essentially, what we did is, I was just a businessman in Altadena. I wasn't a nonprofit. I didn't do community activism. We kind of worked within the private sector. And when this disaster happened and it ripped through my community, we all needed to become activists. We all needed to become nonprofits. We all needed to bond together. And so my sister and I truly focused on what we saw that were gaps that were missing. And so every time we saw kind of a hole, like we saw Altadena residents homeless, and struggling with ALE, we immediately put together a housing symposium, brought all the people together and started targeting housing. So, as we just started seeing things that we felt are needed, we just started to put our brains together. So one is the Altadena Design Works. What we've done is we've taken our facilities, my old offices, and we're turning it into a co-op space. Now what you can do there is print, fax, have conference meetings, meet other people, meet experts. We're partnering with UCLA, we partner with the architecture school at USC. They're gonna bring in experts to talk to you, to teach you about traditional with modern and craftsman, okay? So there is going to be this facility that you can come on a regular. As we probably said, in Charter University, bring on some mental health programs that you guys don't realize you need, but you're probably gonna need. There's going to be a facility, there'll be a home base for you, that you can just come and spend time and get on the Wi-Fi and have a cup of coffee, have some place to go, we can think and things of that nature, okay? That's gonna be the co-op center. We're gonna have weekly and daily educational workshops. The next important thing, as we started the disaster relief, we kind of became case managers, so I started helping seniors one-on-one, doing their FEMA applications, SBA applications. By the way, Corey Williams is here. If anybody has questions, he's from SBA. He has been boots on the ground. I think, how much money have you lent Altadena so far?
We had $3 billion as of Friday.
$3 billion to help rebuild this town over 30 years, 2.53%. They're gonna be critical because what we started seeing is insurance policies. And I'm looking at the price of materials and things, what it costs to build. I said, we're short. I have not seen an insurance policy where I thought someone was overinsured. I'm like, oh, you got too much money to build. No, we're seeing the opposite. So we said, how can we build back the homes you deserve, not the homes you can afford? You shouldn't have less than what you own. So what we've done is we've negotiated over 210,000 products. We are buying at scale. Now, you don't have to spend your money or anything, but we've negotiated deals where manufacturers are providing us these materials, buying as developers, plus additional rebates. So we feel that we can get you most of all of your materials 30 to 50% off, depending on what we negotiate. So we're launching this website, and you just go in and look and see what you need. Send your developer there. We've created clauses for your agreement, so if you have a contractor to say, hey, we want these in there. These are disaster relief terms, because everyone else is gonna give you the general state contract form, these contractors. Believe it or not, contractors make tons of money on the materials they order for you, but we can't afford that. We can't afford to have you make money on top of money, because we barely can build a home now. What we want is to create a model that, you know, if you have set dollars, like if you got 700,000, you gotta build this home for 700,000. There is no change orders. There is no, oh, I don't get a front door, I don't have a refrigerator. So throughout the Dealer Design Center, we vetted a bunch of contractors, a bunch of architects who have agreed to our terms, who have agreed to purchase at scale and provide those discounts back to you. Because we haven't spent 6 months negotiating with materials and manufacturers so that the contractor can make more money. We want these discounts to go to you. And you're not gonna put the money in your pocket, you're gonna build a better home. You're gonna build a bigger home. And so the goal is to build back Altadena to the beauty it was. The only way to do it is if we build together. We need the power. It shouldn't be the contractor telling us his terms. We need to negotiate and say, these are the terms that Altadena's doing. This is what we're willing to pay for HVAC. This is what we're willing to pay for a pool. But you don't wanna give us our price, you don't wanna do it our way? Well then, we won't buy it from you. But if you do, we're gonna give you more homes, and then you can scale. You can do 20 homes instead of one pool. And so if we get them to think on our terms, which we have been doing, because every contractor, including the architects that you heard from today, and the builders you heard from today, agree to our terms. They agree that we are survivors, and we need to be placed in a different situation. This is not a regular deal. We need to build back 10,000 structures. We can only do it if we purchase collectively. So today, we want to give you the fundamentals. We're going to start with this woman here, who is incredible. She's the supervising investigator. She's at the Consumer Protection Unit of Los Angeles County Consumer and Business Affairs. So this is your step one. Step one, what do you do before you do anything? You listen to Mrs. Godwin.
Hi, so good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Janet Godoy. I'm one of the supervising investigators with the Consumer Protection Unit. I have been with the department for over 20 years. And just to give you a little bit of background, I mean, for the most part, I've always been one to provide consumer protection and advocate, not to mention that the department has been doing this for over 30 years. So being the fact that you are all LA County residents, you are very lucky to have a national consumer protection agency that is here to advocate, to educate you, to provide outreach. Not to mention to also serve as a centralized reporting agency when it comes to reporting any allegations of fraud, okay? And what we do is, we investigate complaints, we mediate complaints, and we also go ahead and try and find a resolution, okay? Whether it be that we counsel you, whether it be that we refer you to the appropriate resources that you may need in order to be able to, resolve whatever dispute you're having, okay? But most importantly, our goal is to stop deceptive business practices and also to make sure that we prevent any future fraud from occurring, okay? So you can go ahead and change it to the next slide. And by doing that, I'm here to go ahead and give you a little bit of background as far as, tips that are gonna become very handy when it comes for you to start looking into hiring a licensed contractor, right? I went ahead and I placed on your seat a brochure on our services. Under you will find more of a description of the type of services that we provide. Also, we have telephone number, contact information, address, and so forth. But the most important one that I'm going to go over today is the 10 tips about remediation, restoration, and hiring contractors. Okay? I'm sure that you might have already read, some information that's available, online. Also, I know that we've been doing a lot of outreach when it comes to making sure that you understand and that you are aware of your rights as a consumer, okay? And also making sure that you're never, ever placed under pressure to go with a specific contractor. Maybe the first one that comes to your attention, or somebody that, may be soliciting you, sending you some type of a service, or inviting you, or giving you some type of a free offer, just to kind of, get your attention, okay? So with that being said, you could change to the next slide, please. You don't have nobody monitoring?
Yeah, they don't have the slides. Do you have the deck with you? 'Cause- okay.
Yeah, so you don't have the presentation? Okay, I didn't know that. Sorry about that. Okay, so one thing that I want to go ahead and bring to your attention is, why does it matter, right, to choose the right contract? Your home is your biggest investment, okay? You want to make sure that, now that you start rebuilding, that you have a safe home that is built to your liking, to your comfort. You want to make sure that you hire a contractor that's not going to give you any type of, for example, deceptive service, is not going to perform the services that you had hiring them for. So therefore, it's always important, to make sure that you do hire a licensed contractor. Effective January 1st of 2025, okay, any contractor or any individual that performs work over $1,000, any work that is required to have appropriate permits pulled, electricity, plumbing, HVAC, and also, if let's say, for example, a handyman claims that they could do the work, but yet they're gonna hire workers, that requires them to be licensed, okay? So that's very, very important. The next thing that I also want to bring to your attention is you also want to make sure, a lot of you most likely have home insurance, right? You want to make sure that you run these projects, whatever it is that you're looking to do, whether or not the insurance company actually does it. Because the last thing that you want to do is have a contractor tell you, oh, don't worry, your homeowner's insurance is going to take care of us. Next thing, they don't get paid for whatever reason, and you have a mechanic's lien placed against your home for services that were not paid for, and also not to mention, subcontractors, material, and so forth. So that's why it's very important to always also check with your homeowner's insurance company, make sure that whatever work is being performed is actually going to be covered, so that you know whether it's something that's going to be coming out of your pocket, and this way too, you avoid having any type of mechanic liens recorded against your property. if a mechanically is recorded against your property, then you run the risk of in the future being able to sell your home, right? Being able to refinance it and so forth. The same thing comes if you hire a contractor and the appropriate permits are not pulled, then you run the risk of also, if you decide to sell down the line and it's discovered that proper permits were not pulled, right? Or let's say, for example, there's some type of an inspection that gets done, then those are all things that you would be facing, legal consequences, not to mention, fees, right, that you're gonna have to pay, and you're gonna have to most likely correct the problem, okay? So permits are key, that's important, and that's to ensure your safety, and not to mention to meet any type of legal compliance, okay? So make sure to also check with your local, building and safety, just to make sure whether or not any type of work that's being performed requires, any permits. Okay, so now, contracts required for projects over 1,000, right? You wanna make sure that the contracts spell out the scope of the work that is being performed, materials, timelines, payment schedules are very crucial, right? Your cancellation rights, okay? And also, that it also includes their contractor license number, whether or not they have any type of insurance, whether it be for the workers, whether it be for the work that is being performed, and that they've also outlined your right to cancel, okay? So, your right to cancel is, door-to-door sales, you typically have 3 business days as a cancellation window. So you may sign a contract, then later on, for whatever reason, you go back and you review it and just, for whatever reason, the numbers, the work, or you now decide to do some online research, right, which you should have done before you signed the contract, and you discovered that this contractor may have their license, revoked, or you go on Yelp, Better Business Bureau, discover that other homeowners have also filed complaints against it, right? Or maybe your references, you went ahead and you checked your references, it just does not align with what they told you, okay? So therefore, you decide that you want to cancel. You have 3 business days, okay? For seniors that are 65 and older, you get 5 days to cancel, contracts over $1,000. And if the sale occurs and it's declared to want the zone, then cancellation rights may extend to 7 days, okay? So that is key, and this is why it's important that you review your contract. It's important that you're also aware of your right to cancel. Okay, now where can you verify whether or not a contractor is licensed? You will find contractor state license board, website on the brochure that I handed out, as well as the phone number for them. That's where you could check online, okay? You could go ahead and do another search, put the contractor's license number, which should be under contract, the contractor's business information, right? And then check to see whether or not they have an active license or whether or not it's actually been revoked, okay? You could also confirm whether or not a contractor requires any type of license, let's say, for example, certifications, like for, certain licensing for electrical, plumbing, HVAC, remediation, and so forth. So all those things you could also check directly with the contractor state license board. Okay, so now, complaint, right? Should you have an issue, right, or come across a matter where, let's say, for example, the contractor gave you a contract, you gave your initial, down payment, and for whatever reason, they haven't showed up. You already contact them, and no work has been performed, right? You could always file a complaint. You could also file a complaint directly with contractor or state license board. If it's anything that has to do with, defective work, workmanship, and you're just not satisfied with it, my recommendation is always go ahead and file directly with contractor state license board, because they do have the capability to send inspectors to come out, okay? Our department doesn't take these complaints, we take them more on the fact that, you know, for example, they use deceptive sales tactics, okay? They promise you one thing and yet that service was not delivered, okay? For whatever reason, you discover now that there's been a mechanic lien placed against your home, but yet no work has been performed. Okay? Or all of a sudden you discover that for whatever reason, there's a loan secured against your property, which you never, ever signed for, okay? One thing I wanna throw out there, I know I only have 10 minutes, but I do wanna throw out there that we do have a homeowner notification program as well, and that's a form of protection that we actually provide to homeowners whenever there's a qualifying document recorded, okay? So right now, let's say, for example, somebody fraudulently was trying to acquire title to a property, okay? Once that grant deed is recorded with the registered recorder's office, or let's say equipment deed, right, for change of ownership, then a copy of that recorded document gets mailed to the mailing address and to the actual property itself. That's to notify you and let you know that this document has been recorded. In the event that you do not recognize this document, you never sign it, you never secured a loan against your property, you have no idea of the deed of trust, right? That's the legal document that's used to secure a loan against the property being recorded, then you contact us. Then we will walk you through the steps that you need to take in order to report the alleged fraud, okay? But that's something that LA County does make available to the homeowners, and it's there, you know, to prevent any future fraud from occurring, especially if a grantee was recorded and somebody's trying to get a hold of your property to be able to benefit from either transferring it, selling it, or securing loans against the property, okay? So I'm up already my 10 minutes, but I will be around to answer any questions that you may have. So I hope that these resources, you know, you keep them handy, you review them, because I do want you to be smart consumers, okay? I don't, you know, for the most part, we get the aftermath. We get, well, the fact that, you know, I was defrauded, I never signed, I never agreed, okay? So it's very important that you take your time, that you read through that contract, right? Any side agreement that you make, whatever it may be, make sure they're in writing. Make sure you document everything. And as the work gets completed, as you start paying out, make sure that you also get waivers, right? That work that was performed has been paid for, okay? That way, you don't have subcontractors, you don't have laborers, you don't have, for example, people filing claims against your home for things that were not paid for, okay? And I'll leave you with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bravo.
Thank you. So let's do a little quick recap. One, remain vigilant, okay? I want you guys to be smart in the outset. A lot of times when we've done construction, it was a cousin, you just got a good friend, and all of a sudden, you get involved with someone and it just starts to go south. You don't have the opportunity for anything to go south.
No.
So you need to think like a team, okay? We're gonna set up residential better. So we'll have like at 10 a.m. at the Aldi Design Work, a bunch of us who will vet through these licenses, make sure they're all good for anyone who's in systems. It's critical that you register your home, because what can happen is you have a general contractor. So you pay for the HVAC system. Well, they hire a subcontractor. If they don't pay the sub's gonna put a lien on your house. It says, I wasn't paid. And she's gonna say, oh, no, it was paid. Here's the release, here's the waivers. So I know these are tough things, and I know that it's hard and we all have to learn this at our age, but we must remain vigilant. And you have to help your other residents. You've got to provide this information. Every time you talk to your neighbors, give them this information, okay? There are resources out there, but let's all, like she said, be vigilant, smart consumers, okay? Get multiple bids. You shouldn't be stuck with the first bid. How do you know how much something is unless you ask this guy, how much would you charge me to build this? How much would you charge me? How much would you charge me? Then you'll get an idea if these guys are being honest. what I'm seeing is they quote them a price, people get excited, and then they send them to me and ask them questions. So what does it include? Well, it doesn't include windows and doors. You're giving them a whole without windows and doors. Don't give them a price without windows and doors, or cabinets, or toilets. You know. So be vigilant. Ask the questions. Let them know you're going to take this bid to another contractor right off the bat, so they know they can't mess with you. And I'm gonna have my lawyer see it, and my friends and my neighbor's a contractor, and I'm gonna talk to this lady from Consumer Affairs and the state board. I'm that type of resident. So in the beginning, he's not messing with any of us. Okay? So then what happens? The first thing that you need to start thinking about is not who's your contractor. That's not the first question. The first question you should be asking is, who's your architect, okay? And we got very, very lucky. We've got one of the brightest minds in architecture. He holds a dual master's degree, a master's in architecture from Harvard University and a master in real estate development from the University of Southern California. So while he does this, does anyone have any questions for Consumer Affairs that she didn't hit? She did a good job, huh? All right.
My phone number, as a matter of fact, is 1-800-593-222. It's on the, each and every one of the brochures that I have it, that has our logo on it. It's there, yeah. Oh, let me go ahead and add them. Oh.
You see these Harvard guys,
Got it.
they don't know how to plug in a computer. Yeah, giving all these compliments. Leave it up to you, Aaron.
Okay. I don't know if I'll be able to do the mic and mouse at the same time. No, this is fine, I can do this. Hi, my name is Aaron Brummer. It's nice to meet all of you. I'll try and go through this fast. I only have 10 minutes, and there's a lot that I want to get to. Just quickly in terms of my background, I've been practicing for about 30 years now, 20 years in LA. I'm doing, right now in Altadena, I'm probably doing maybe 12 or so fire rebuilds, both single family and multifamily. A lot of them are pretty far along, so I'm quite familiar with the process. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about process mainly, and kind of try to preemptively answer some questions that I get a lot from a lot of people who talk to me about doing the fire rebuilds. The very first thing that you should be doing, like right away, is go to the one-stop shop office at 464 Woodbury, okay? What the county has done is they've set up a building department kind of like area where you can meet with the regional planning person, the health department if you're on a septic system, the building department, you can talk with the building plan checker, and you can talk with the public works department. That's the first thing you should do. All right, and what you need, there are two questions that you need to answer when you're going there. And they'll just talk to you and give you some general information. They'll give you a bunch of handouts, which I'm gonna show you. But what they're gonna answer for you is one, do you need to get a soils report, okay? And generally, if you're in a landslide or hillside area, they'll tell you, and you will need to get a soils report, okay? If you're not in those areas, then you don't need a soils report. And two, and I know this sounds really ironic, but they'll tell you if you're in the mapped area for the very high fire hazard severity zone, which you might not be, even though your house burned. You might not be in the very high fire hazard severity zone. You need to know that, because that has implications on the design of the house, in terms of some details, okay? So beyond that, some of the things that you're gonna need are gonna be building records, and you're gonna need tax assessor records if you don't have as-built drawings of what was there before, okay? And there are certain ways of getting those, but you actually don't need to do that, your architect can do it. Okay, so hiring an architect. So there's actually two consultants that you're gonna need, and I'll kind of show you where this is coming from, okay? So this general handout, okay, discuss, okay, what do you need to submit for plan check? You need a set of architectural plans, you need a set of structural plans, You need the Title 24 energy envelope calculations, which I'll explain in a second. And then you need your structural plans, structural calcs, okay? I already discussed whether or not you need a soils report or not, okay? And then there's also the question, are you gonna need a survey and are you gonna need a civil engineer? We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, for the architect produces the architectural drawings and they work with you to, kind of do if you wanna redesign the house, you can do that. There are certain things, which is one, you can build within 10% of the existing square footage of the house or 200 square feet, whichever is greater. That's kind of a little new development. A lot of the houses in Altadena were in the 1,200 to 1,500 square foot range, and 10% increase on that isn't that much. So they've allowed for you to do up to 200 square feet, okay? There are very specific circumstances under which they will not allow you to do that 10% increase. It's if you're in a landslide area and if the soils report kind of flags a few things. That's very rare, so don't worry about that for now, okay? If you can also increase the height by up to 10%, okay? Sorry, going back to square footage for a sec. Well, how do you know what your square footage is? The building department's gonna go based upon what the tax assessor records say, okay? That's it, okay? The 10% height increase, well, how do you prove it? Like, a lot of the drawings, the building records that you have might not show anything about height. The tax assessor doesn't say anything about height. So how do you know? Well, if you have photographs of the house, of what it was like before, that can be helpful. Going to the one-stop shop and talking with the regional planning person there, they're gonna look at the photographs on Google Earth, like what was there before. You're gonna have to just try to kind of make an argument for what you had before, So that will help you with the height. They do not review for design, okay? So if you want to redesign your entire interior of your house, add more bedrooms, whatever, do whatever you want. You can do that just as long as you're within the parameters of the like-for-like rebuild of the 10% square footage, 10% height. Your footprint can change. You can make a bunch of changes to it within reason, okay? But you still need to maintain. If you're gonna keep your footprint as it was before, you're gonna need to maintain the setbacks. If you're changing the footprint substantially, you wanna stay within the underlying zoning setbacks, okay? And again, the architect can help you figure that stuff out, okay? There are two kind of tracks that I see these projects going on. One is where the owner hires the architect, or one where the owner hires a contractor and the contractor is hiring the architect and the structural engineer, okay? Either way is fine, and in fact, if you don't want to be overwhelmed with tons of decisions, sometimes it's better just to hire the contractor and let them be the design build people. However, you need to make sure that the architect that you're working with is responsive. They have to be licensed, California state license, okay? They need to have errors and omissions or professional liability insurance. And you want to know what their limits are, what their coverage is. Most, I would say for most rebuilds, that professional liability coverage, you're going to want it to be at least $300,000 to $500,000 per occurrence for the architect. Same with the structural engineer. They need to have errors and omissions or professional liability insurance. They need to have a California state license, okay? There's a whole subclass of people out there, of consultants that are drafting services, though that they're not necessarily licensed. Maybe they have somebody that they hire to plan stamp for them. That can be a little bit risky, I would say, put it that way, okay? Okay, so you've got an architect, you've got a structural engineer, Title 24 energy envelope calculation. So California state has kind of pretty strict energy envelope restrictions on your house. What that's going to mean in practical purposes for you, one of the handouts you're going to get at the one-stop shop is this electric ready requirements for the California Building Energy Efficiency Standards. They've got one if you're doing a multifamily rebuild, they've got one if you're doing a single family rebuild. I'm not going to get into these details, but what this basically means is that for a single family house, you're going to have to provide solar, okay, based upon the energy calcs that you get. The energy calcs are going to spit out a number saying you need to provide 2.5 kilovolts of of solar on your roof, okay? The general contractor will have a solar subcontractor that'll tell you, okay, this is how many panels we're gonna put on your roof to achieve that kilovolt requirement, okay? That's one thing. The other thing is that you're gonna essentially, a lot of these requirements are about, okay, if you build without gas, or in the future you get away from gas, you're gonna have to provide electrical capacity for an electric heat pump for your heating and cooling system as opposed to a gas furnace. It's a lot of stuff like that, okay? And again, my time is limited, so I'm not gonna get into the nitty-gritty details, okay? Now, let's say you don't have any as-built drawings of your existing house. Well, what do you do, okay? So, I'm gonna skip around a little bit. I'll come back to some of this stuff. So one is your architect can pull the building records, okay? And in Altadena, I found that the building records can be very robust or they can be non-existent. It's very spotty, okay? I'm doing a multifamily rebuild of like 20 units and there's no building records at all. Or I'm doing this house on Taos that has like a good set of records, okay? And you can see here that it was showing like what the house looked like, what the setbacks were, what the property line was, and so on, okay? So that's one thing, getting the building records. Number two is you get the tax assessor records. And again, your architect or contractor can do this. And what's good about this is that the tax assessor, they have a square footage on file, okay? And how do they get that square footage? Well, at some point in the past, they actually sent somebody out and measured the house, okay? And so you've got your records here, and they're kind of hard to understand, but this gives you, even if you have nothing, no drawings, no nothing, this is enough for an architect to produce a set of drawings of your house, okay? That and probably some photographs, okay? Last thing I'll talk about, I don't know how much time I've taken, but last thing I'll talk about is plan check. So, good news is, I think due to his efforts, you don't have to pay for plan check fees, okay? Because this house that I did was, like, they charged $4,500 for plan check fees and I was flabbergasted. And then they sent me a form, which is this form, last week, saying that we can apply for a waiver or a refund of the plan check fees, which is awesome. Because there's no reason why they should be charging you guys plan check fees at all. So, plan check process. With City of Altadena, you're in LA County, okay? There's a system called Epic LA, which is an online plan check system. Again, the architect does this. You get your drawings, your Title 24 energy calcs together, and your structural drawings and calculations together. And then you submit through their online system, and they screen it. And then bottom line is it should take a few weeks to get those first set of plan check corrections back at most. It take a week or two, you know. And I believe that there's some new thing where they've approved AI plan check. I don't really know that much about it, so I can't speak to it just yet. But the bottom line is that the plan check process is actually pretty quick, you know, and smooth, which is rare because it's normally a soul-crushing experience, but this is not that case. And what happens is you get drawing markups, okay, which this is an example of it. And all of these markups are just adding notes to the drawings, you know, like they're just basically like, put all these energy notes on there, you know, do this, do that, but it's mainly just notes and detail clarification. It's really kind of like, you know, basic comments. They're not going too granular. They're not trying to like plan check you to death. There's a clear attempt in my mind to make the process pretty easy, you know. Oh, one more thing, survey. If you don't have a survey of your lot, I would recommend getting one if the lot is cleared, okay? You don't have to have a survey for plan check submittal. I would recommend it just because it helps with accuracy of construction documents in terms of knowing what your grade levels are, knowing what your setbacks are, where your property lines are, and so on, and it can help avoid problems during construction, like, oh, we thought this was flat, but this is actually pitching, and we need to do a step in the house, or something like that. It's a way of avoiding problems during construction. Okay?
One thing I want to bring up,
Yes.
Aaron, since you're up there, about the other day we were talking to a survivor, and they said their line now is over like 3 feet into their side now because they got it surveyed, and the whole what they thought was there is
Yes.
not there anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would recommend it.
Altadena's got a lot of that going on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
Altadena,
we
like,
need that.
in particularly up on this hillside area, it's like, there's some lots that were like, we don't know where the property is, we can't figure it out, you know? So the two issues with surveys right now are money, you know, like, they're, typically for a normal lot, it should only cost around $3 to $4 grand, but there is, I think, a bit of inflation pricing going on. But more importantly is like just getting a surveyor out there in a timely fashion, you know, because they're in high demand. Particularly if your lot hasn't been cleared, like how do you schedule that? So, but again, I would highly recommend it. It's not necessary for plan check, but I would highly recommend it. So, okay? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, excellent.
Okay. I pulled this out so you can close out.
I have a question back here.
Yeah.
Well, I think that,
Yeah,
correct me
what
if
we're
I'm
gonna
wrong.
do, we're gonna do a nice Q&A. We set a lot of time out for that.
Battery died, I think, on that.
No problem. So there's a few things that people have gotten confused about,
That one too.
is this 10% increase. So
That one too.
the tax assessor's office, you would assume that they give you 10%, that they're not gonna tax you 10%. And so initially, everybody thought that they won't get reassessed. So, we have an incredible assessor who's been fighting for us, Mr. Prang. He's been out there trying to fight, but we have the legislature who keeps trying to find ways to kick it back down. So I will teach you one thing that we learned about getting the permits waived, fees waived. You know, these fees could rack up almost 50,000. That's almost 5% of your entire bill. Remind you, you paid these fees when someone built this house already. There should not be a reason why we should be reassessed fees that we've already paid for. So we fought and we won that. What I can tell you is the more we kick and scream, the more they will do. There is no reason for them to reassess us and repunish us over this 10%. So collectively, we must argue for it, okay? We must fight for everything. He brought up another point. These surveyors, now there's an inflation, because there's a lot of us, and they can do what they want. We collectively must tell the surveyors, we're paying this much, and that's all we're willing to pay, and we all are. If we all fight, they won't gouge us. Because it's not gonna be supply and demand. We must take control of this build. We can't let surveyors, or architects, or this guy, or that guy say, well, you know, if you don't pay me this, I'm not doing it. Well, then don't do it. And none of us do it. I know it's tough, but collectively, we can bring the price of building these homes down. And it's not just about saving money. It's about getting the better door, the better window, the better fixture, the bigger bathroom that we deserve, and not us stretching every dime to get the cheaper item or the cheaper home, because this is what we can afford. Collectively, we must have a collective voice. And speaking of which, we've got an incredible expert. He's the founder of Whitestone DCI. He conducts what's called pre-construction management. There's a whole other area that will help you through this rebuild process before you get into construction. And so it's an honor to have Mr. Jake Mallett, the founder of Whitestone DCI.
If it
Take
dies,
over for us.
Oh, there we go.
if it dies, just put it
Back in
aside.
it. All right, thank you so much. And I want to say Aaron had so much good information. A lot of what I probably would have said, I think he actually covered, which is fantastic. So I would just say that's the type of architect you want to look for. So what is pre-construction management? You guys may have heard the term land use, you may have heard the term expediting, and that's what my company does. So we manage permits, we manage approvals through various jurisdictions throughout LA County, and Altadena being one of them. So we have, I think, about 8 projects in right now, and we're seeing more and more coming. And most of those are actually in the pre-phase. So if you're wondering where you're at in the process, what I've noticed is that the majority of people are just now starting to get applications submitted, or just now starting.
Oh, there you go.
There, it's all good. I can use my old tour guide voice. So, or you can find yourself basically at the beginning of the bell curve. So all the early adopters, I think, have already gotten in, and now the bell curve is starting. And I think Aaron brought up an interesting point. LA County has historically been notorious for being harder to deal with in plan check and being disorganized and unstructured. So it is nice to see that they're offering pre-construction or preliminary meetings, I should say, and that they are leaning into technology and AI, and that we're seeing them feel more organized in the beginning. But what I would just caution people against, and what I always try to tell all my clients, is to have conservative expectations going in. There's people who will tell you, I can do this, I can wave a magic wand and get things done. I always try to give more of a conservative analysis. When you're looking at timelines of what an average plan check probably could be expected as, what the county is quoting as their timeline they want to work on is what I would call a 10-5 split, 10 business days for that initial review, and then 5 business days for each review thereafter. But that's only one side of the equation, because really if there's a desk, there's actually 2 people on either side of that desk. On our side is the private team representing you guys, the owner. We're the ones with the architect, the engineer, my team, and we're pushing to get your project approved quicker. And on the other side of that desk is the city official. So they may take 10 business days, but then they hand it back to us. And the question is, well, how long should it take the project team to be able to address all of those corrections? Typically, what is considered the average timeline that is expected is 2 to 3 weeks for a project team to turn around the corrections that were issued. So then if we think about 10 business days or 2 weeks on one side of the desk and then another 2 weeks on the other, that's what I would call one cycle. And we typically have, or some architects refer to them as rounds, we typically have 3 of those rounds. So I'm estimating, and Aaron, you could probably speak because you've been through some of these, more of these than I have so far with this submittal. I typically expect like 3 to 4 months with the fire jobs to be what it should take. I am concerned that as the bell curve starts and we have 1,000 applications in, there's 10,000 structures, right? So let's say 5,000 applications. My concern would be that could start to stretch out into, let's say, 6 to 8 month territory. And that's where I want you guys to just try to manage your expectations, right? That's what I think is really important. We can talk a little bit, here's kind of my background. I've basically been doing this 10 years in the city of Los Angeles at this point. I have a degree in city planning. I cut my teeth in this business doing really complex hillside estate construction in the city of LA, where you learn about all kinds of loopholes and things like that. And the guys that taught me were backgrounds were attorneys, so we kind of look at the code in a way of like, how do we get around obstacles? And like one great example would be is that in LA County, I think LA County, if any of you guys have an update, have they granted the waiver for RFA on basements?
Oh, I don't know.
I think it's still undecided. So basements historically are exempted RFA, and so this big question came about. In that 10%,
What's RFA?
that's a great question. Sorry, technical term. That'd be residential floor area. And so the way that your property deems how much you can build is usually some kind of a calculation. It's typically like a percentage of your lot size, like let's say like 0.45 of lot size for a lot of lots. And so if you're looking at that on the sheets he showed you is like title block, you'd have RFA, which would be the total number of square footage, and then let's say we had 10%. So let's say you had 2,000 square feet, 10% of that being that 200, right? And so historically in many jurisdictions, RFA is exempted when it's a basement. And right now, there's a lot of concern with people who don't get that much square footage back. Can I do a basement? Our house wasn't that big. We want to add storage. We want to expand the family. And so one of these sort of loopholes that we thought about and found was that because the governor's executive order allows for an accessory dwelling unit, we asked the county, would you accept an accessory dwelling unit, which legally is allowed to go up to 850 square feet under the state code? And they said that they would accept that. So that is something that can be looked into. It would have some different sort of egress and ingress tricks around getting in and out. But those are the sorts of questions we ask when we're working with our clients and with with architects and builders and developers. Like I said, I think Aaron, you covered so many good things. When you're putting together your project team, something that I really like to advise clients about is just asking about the office that your architect is working with. To give you an idea, we do not design in my office. We only do project management. And so usually an architect will hire us when they've gotten to the point that they're tired of balancing the bureaucracy with the design work. A full-time project manager that is good can healthily manage about 20 projects. If they're really good, that might push up close to, like, let's say 30. And so I think that's like a good thing to ask when you are deciding to work with an architect. How many people do you have in your office and how many jobs do you have right now? Because what you don't want to have happen, and what I've seen happen a lot, especially if they're offering a really competitive price, is that they take a bunch of work and then they start working on jobs and then they get more work, and those jobs they were working on, you know, they want to, but and now are just focused on the new work. And so then they're trying to play this push-pull game of helping their old clients versus helping their new clients. And I think that's something that you want to watch out for. I've seen it with small engineering firms. I've seen it with small architecture firms. We have clients who hire us and say, can you please help us? We hired this guy. He hasn't responded in 6 months. And that can happen. And so I think a big part of our job and a part of my job is really trying to give people reality versus like selling a dream. And that just comes from, you know, dealing with so many people who've gotten frustrated over the years that, like, I've learned that there's no reason for me to have people frustrated in me 8 months later because I told them something I couldn't do today, you know, and I think that's an honest thing to look for. What you guys can do right now that I think is gonna make life a lot easier for you is just putting records together. There's a bunch of different software and Google Docs, there's Dropbox. You can just put it on your computer, but being very clear and organized with that file structure is going to help you out. And things that you would want to have in that file organization system would be like your grant deed, your ownership documents. If you want to write down on our website, Aaron had talked about those assessor documents. We actually created a button on our website that prepares an email for you. It's totally free to send to the assessor and get your assessor documents. Our website is whitestone.la, and at the very top you'll see a banner that says fire resources, and you'll find in there that there's a button that says, I think it's something along the lines of like, get your records, and you click it, and it literally is a pre-vetted email. You just type in your property information, it's already prepped to go. Hit send, it's gonna send it to the assessor office, and you should get back your assessor documents. Those assessor records are valuable. Sometimes you might have easements on your property, which might have water lines, or maybe there's power lines. Sometimes people have easement agreements with neighbors. That could be challenging or confusing. Those are things that you want to have plotted. Typically a surveyor is one of the people that will be able to plot those for you. You can request from your title company to get a plotted easements map as well. That's something that can be done. It's usually not going to be too complicated for people, but we find sometimes there's challenges that come around those. The other would be requesting from the city, or from the county, I should say, those permit records. And as Aaron stated accurately, sometimes you get a lot, sometimes you get absolutely nothing. And so it's really important to try to hit all of those different avenues so that you have some kind of information and you can piece those together with your design team. When it gets into the actual process, what we do is similar to what an architect often does. So typically we're hired by people who are B2B, so business to business. Oftentimes an architecture firm who has a lot of jobs coming in will hire us to just deal with the bureaucracy element. Often builders will hire us. We do sometimes have single-family homeowners who bring us on to just be a project manager and kind of like an owner's rep. We don't negotiate contracts or anything like that, but when it comes to the entire permitting and approval process, we quarterback the design team, the engineering team, which means that we are in charge of getting those deliverables to us in a timely manner. Prime example, last week, an Altadena job. I'm waiting on drawings from my civil engineer. It's taken way too long. I give him a call. I say, what is going on here? I've never seen such a long deliverable for something so simple. He says, well, Jake, the builder's a new client, and I don't really wanna ruffle any feathers, but I need proof that the checks have gone out, that I've got paid, and I'm not releasing my drawings until that's happened. Well, had we just been waiting on emails, probably another week would have gone by, right? So I call the builder, get a picture of the check, send it to him. That's a part of the job. That's the type of stuff that we're doing every day, right? Maybe I have an architect that just went on vacation. Maybe I'm calling his office and saying, hey, who else is here that can get this done? Maybe our office understands what needs to get added to a drawing. I might just text them and say, hey, do you mind if I just add the note to your drawings in like a PDF thing? And sometimes they're okay with that. So it's understanding the process and being able to jump in and help whoever needs that help from the design team, from the engineering team, and then also being able to work with the city. We're experts in escalation. If something's not getting done, working with supervisors, bringing it up to the appropriate person, and dealing with fires on either side of the desk. So I think right now, what I would advise is if you're working with a good architect who maybe has 1 or 2 people in the office, you may not need our services at this exact time. If you're maybe gonna wait a few months or, maybe be getting into the city a little bit later and you want somebody to basically be your voice, then maybe that would be more appropriate to hire us at that time. Or if you're working with a group that is just doing like 20 or 30 or 40 jobs, then hopefully they already have us on their team, or you can recommend us and we can help with that. So it's kind of a background of what that project, pre-construction project management entails. And then obviously the land use component that we deal with would be if there's any sort of unusual planning requirements. Like if you decide not to do an eligible project, 110% like for like, you wanna do a custom home, you might be in like a design overlay, which requires submittal to the planning department to review the community plan. Maybe there's certain design requirements. Maybe there's a filing with findings that has to be written. And that's what our office does as well. If there's maybe you want that 10-foot tall fence, but it's not legally allowed by right, and you have to file a planning application for like a zoning administrator's determination or a variance. That's something that we would do. We also do helping people open bars and restaurants and all kinds of conditional use permits, all of that sort of thing. So we're essentially like a junior version of a land use attorney, if you will. If you don't want to go all the way up to the $500 an hour, you have us who are all college accredited professionals. We don't have that law degree, but we're experts with planning backgrounds and engineering backgrounds, things like that. So I hope that's helpful. Does anybody have any questions?
So just to be clear, you're basically project managing through the design phase, and then there's a handoff at some point?
When we would hand off is when there's a permit in hand. So we're not involved in the construction.
You're done when we get the permit?
Exactly. So we would be pre-submittal, and then we would manage the entire submittal process. And then once that permit's issued, we hand it off to the contractor. And then one thing our office does do is we have a really organized records system for handing off to the client so that you then have an itemized, annotated, and hyperlinked file of everything that was in your project. So it's just bringing an extra level of organization to your project. Sometimes we help out in construction if like an inspector's being a pain in the butt, or something like that, but it's generally before the construction starts is where it would be. Anybody else? Anything? Well, thank you so much.
Excellent. Benny, can you turn the heat up?
Yeah, absolutely. They're making some blankets. Anybody want a blanket? It's freezing in here.
I know it's cold there and cold there.
There's gotta be
We try to
another-
Put the heat on right here.
Yeah, I see it.
Keep it nice and warm. Thank you. I need you guys to think and stay strong. So our workshop 101 was designed for the preliminary stuff. The preliminary architectural plan, the pre-construction management, things to do before you start. I do want to remind you, How the Design Works is a free community center, so you can get all this information, meet more architects. If you meet a great architect, you can invite him over to meet other residents. Maybe we can negotiate 4 homes together for you. You have, feel like your insurance didn't give you enough money, is there additional monies there? Maybe we can take a look at these policies for you and see how we can help you out, see if we can find additional grants. There may be additional grants for home hardening, so you tell the government, hey, we wanna become more fire resilient. We want everproof vents, and we want a Class A roof. Will the government give us some more money to pay for those things? Will the insurance company do that? These are information you're not getting. So we want to create a hub for you to come and get that information. And if you have the information, come and provide that. And if you have an idea of, you know, how to grow, you know, fire resistant plants, and come down there and create a little committee, and at 9 o'clock, talk about plants. We have to rebuild together. No one's gonna do this for us. We gotta fight. You ever see, you know, the little fish in the ocean, and you see this big shark coming? But these fish, when they come together, freaks the sharks out. That's how we have to think, okay? We have to unite and defend each other and protect each other, okay? And advise each other. That's what we gotta do. And speaking of advisors, I have an incredible guy here. He's a former mustache model, but we brought him in. He has been an incredible advisor to the Altadena Coalition and Alta Design Works. He takes visions and turns them into something, into a reality. So it's just been an honor to work with this guy. He's been fantastic all across the board.
I think everybody's gonna become a builder after this couple weeks. They're gonna be professional builders. We're gonna come to you. I'm gonna run this as a interview. Beautiful, okay. Hi, I'm, I don't need it. I know. So my name is Benjamin. Everybody calls me Benny Blanco. I'm not from the Bronx, just a heads up. I got lucky and a blessing to meet Freddie, you know, and actually everybody we've been meeting has been so amazing this past, I don't know, 6 months already. The one thing that we realized and learned that everybody has the same heart, everybody has the same vision, everybody has the kindness in them, and really genuinely everybody wants to help. Like everyone in this room, they're all amazing in what they do and they're putting their time aside to help you guys. We come in, I would say, after the permits have approved, you know, like, because construction comes in after that. I would say the chaos, pre-construction chaos is a chaos in itself, but after you get the permits, it's a whole different chaos that starts after. There's so many moving parts that come into the picture. So, one thing we wanted to definitely share with you guys, some things to look out for. And I think, this one? Oh, yes, I missed this slide. One thing I want to make clear for all of you, we're not here to sell you anything. All we're here to do is to share our experiences, share our knowledge, share our systems, share our processes, so you can become aware and understand, you know, what it takes, what to look out for, what to know, take notes, and really to help you guys out. We're not here to sell you guys anything, so just so you guys know. Project manager. What do construction project managers do and why it's important? A lot of the construction companies will have their own project manager. You can always hire your own, but generally they'll come with it. They'll definitely check your timelines because a calendar system is very important in any construction. Whatever you're doing, it's super important. And if you guys don't know what's going on, then it's gonna be scary for you to know what is coming up next. One thing we definitely recommend is stay away from the verbal stuff too much and try to have everything written. Whatever it is, have it written because then you're protecting yourself, you're protecting everybody else around you. One system that I've learned on our end is we have a calendar system that's digital, that you can access, that let's say the client, the builders, the architects, like everybody can access it anytime in the world with their phone. Nowadays, everybody has a phone, you know, they know how to use it.
Except no cell coverage in Altadena.
Alta Design Works has full-time coverage, free Wi-Fi all day long. So yeah, I'll show you guys a calendar system that we try to, we show to everybody. So you get, oh my God, what happened? What happened here? Oh, technical difficulties, and I'm the technical guy. Horrible.
So Benny,
See,
what do we do?
I just
What do
ruined
we do
everything.
if a builder asks for full payment up front?
You run. If
So-
any, yeah, if you wanna
So-
talk about that, because.
So what we like to do is.
We've heard that
we-
before.
We request, and I'm recommending you request what's called a construction trust, okay? So you put up your money, there's a lot of reasons to do that. There's a lot of people who've never had $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 in an account. So kind of protect yourself also, because you know, you had some, your old school bill, there was a nice car, there was a vacation you always wanted, well, every time you chip away at that money, it's gonna cost you to your home. So, talk to your contractor about a construction trust. And so what happens is, you know, let's say it's foundation's poured, he thumbs up, you thumb up, that amount that you agreed to in your agreement gets released to him, okay? This way, if he ever screws up, you stop midway, you still have the rest of your money to finish, okay? If there's a dispute, you can call a guy like Benny, you can call out the Design Works, we'll come there and say, the foundation is good, I don't know what you're complaining about, or hey, the foundation is wrong, I see why you're complaining. You know, don't thumbs up the release of this fund yet.
And make sure they don't ask for all the money up front. Finances has to be released at different phases. And I'll show you guys an example of phases, what I mean by phases. So, really? Horrible, fired, fired. Okay, there we go. So here is a sample of a construction from ground up. So you guys get a feel of phases. You know, phase one, you have your excavation. This is where you want to make sure you have photos also. And again, going back to whoever your GC is or whoever you're hiring, make sure they do things on like digitally and not paper. If you see guys with like a lot of stacks of paper and their GCs, you kind of want to be careful because we do live in a technology world and everything is digital nowadays. So just keep an eye on that. We've had people come into us and you know they were like, yeah, I'm a builder, I do this. I go, can I see your files? How do you manage projects? And they'll show me like a couple stacks of folders. I'm like, yeah, that's scary because when you start handling 20, 30, 50, like, you know, like Jacob said, you need to have technology in place. So here's a rough idea of phases. You'll go through a phase and you have your inspection. Phase two will come your rebars, your foundation. So every phase there is an inspection you have to go through. And on our end, we'll lay out a calendar for you that you can access, that you see, not just you, anyone. Everyone has access to it. So you get to see what's coming, what day, how long it's gonna take, what day of the week, what month. So you have this overview of your entire project being built. Because, you know, obviously you're not gonna call every second and go, hey, what's going on? What have you done? What did you do? Where are you at? It's easier for you to just give you transparent access and you just see everything. So something to definitely keep in mind. Another thing we talked about is budgeting. Project manager is also overseeing the budgeting. You know, what's being cost, what is everything going to? And each phase has its release form. So going back to the calendar, once your certain phase is done, that's when you release your funds. Do not ever give everything up front. But things can go wrong. You know, imagine, usually project managers are on top of every single thing, but I always say keep an open mind because there are things that nobody can control. Things can go wrong that is out of, you know, our control. So even though they are on top of it, please keep an open mind. Technology is another thing I talked about, and I want to show you one thing that has helped a lot of survivors, that they can't imagine something the same as everyone else. Yes, architects build, you know, the plans, they give you plans, but you guys are not architects. You're not gonna understand a lot of what this means. So one thing we've done is we've implemented a 3D model of the houses that helps people visually understand, oh, this is what we're talking about. And I'll show you a little example of how it works. These, believe it or not, are not real. These are actually 3D renders of the space. So let's say if we were to have the plans submitted, we have the plans, then we go into a 3D model, with the clients, you sit with the clients and go, okay, guys, let's see. Here's the cabinets I want. So I'm gonna click on the cabinets and you guys get to see what changes happen together at the same time. So let's say we wanna try chocolate brown. Oops, I skipped two. Chocolate brown. So you visualize your space, you see what it looks like, you can change the countertops, you can change the floor, you can change, I don't know, let's say we wanna go with a random red color for some odd reason. And the countertops, I can make this as horrible as you guys want, but tell me what you guys are thinking. But yeah, we can change the color, you know, we can, I hope nobody likes this at all. Good, then we'll be fine. But going back to that, we want to make everyone else's lives easy to visualize, so there's no surprises at the end, because there could be surprises if you don't know what's coming. So please take the time to see if this is an option, and if not, you know, we're always around to help you guys with this. Our entire team is ready to help through this process, so you guys can visually know what you're seeing. It's very important. Most don't have the same imagination. I can say white, and I promise you, all of us will have a different white vision in our minds. So, yeah, outdated process I already talked about. And one thing I always say I try to end it with is, there's a lot in life we can't control. There's things that we just can't control. Things that happen have happened, we cannot go back, we can't change it. The one thing we can control is how we react to things. That's the only thing we're in control with. So keep your heads up, think positive, and one thing I tell everybody is, when you wake up, raise your hand and count 5 things you're thankful for. And I promise you, you'll realize that you're in a really good place, even though, you know, for others it's not. But I promise you, if you think about the 5 things you're thankful for today, your entire mindset will change about everything. So stay positive and keep going, keep your chin up, and if anybody has something to say, all of us will come. Kick their ass. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for coming today.
All right, I know there's a lot of information, and
It's a lot.
we're not supposed to know all this, we're not supposed to learn all this, so, in our paths, we realize that sometimes, like my parents, you may wanna see things packaged up for you. You may know something when you may know you like it when you see it. You're gonna be like, well, I like that house, I like how it designs, and I like those things. So, there are now kind of a movement towards kind of encapsulating things for you. Showing you just 5 or 6 different floor styles, or 6 or 7 cabinets, and giving you the reduction in the amount of information that you need to go through and learn, okay? This is a lot. This wasn't designed to make you panic, because it makes me panic thinking about it. But the idea is to empower you and give you the knowledge. Our resources are available, and get smart. So I was gonna have a panel discussion, but what I wanna do, since we're short on time, is I wanna open this up to your questions, okay? I'm bringing back these experts, they're gonna sit right down here, and they're gonna answer your questions. You get the first question.
I have 2 questions. I can talk loud. What actually does the structural engineer do?
Okay, so
That comes after the architect, right?
So typically the way it works is the architect will draw the schematic drawings, like just work out the basic floor plans with you, elevations, sections, roof plan. And then you move into what's called the construction document phase, where you turn that kind of like set of ideas that have been formalized, you turn them into real construction documents. And part of that is bringing the structural engineer on board. The structural engineer will actually design the framing system and the foundation system. So, for example, if you have a roof structure, right, the structural engineer will say, okay, that roof structure has to be 2x12s at 16 inches on center. I have to have shear walls of a certain length here and there. My foundation, my exterior wall footings need to go 24 inches deep and they need to be this wide, stuff like that. So they really detail out the actual framing and foundation plans, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the second question I have, to Jake,
Sure.
I believe that's Jake.
Yep.
The mustache model.
Yeah.
For your 3D,
Oh, that's Ben.
Benny Blanco, not from the Bronx.
okay, for the 3D model that you just showed?
Yeah.
Do you do that if a person already has their design and everything?
If you have the architectural plans, yeah, we can definitely help with that.
Okay.
And one thing I can add is that like most architects, including my office, we use this program called Revit,
Yeah.
which is an integrated 3D modeling system.
Yeah.
So the clients that I work with, we show them the 3D modeling as we work on it, and we do renderings, and we do all of that 3D visualization for you from the outset.
Yeah.
And that's pretty common with most architects.
The only thing is if you guys have finishes to change, that
Right.
becomes
Then it's
annoying
just
for
a-
them and they
yeah.
hate it, so.
Yeah, typically I don't do interior design. I don't
Yeah.
do interior design at all.
So there's two steps, initial step and then I would say oh my God, I want this, I want that, let's try this light, let's try that phase. Because it changes, everything changes. And you have the option of seeing it right then.
So Ben is doing
It's called
carpentry.
Revit.
Yeah, doing carpentry.
Yeah.
REVIT.
Yeah.
By the way, I forgot to mention one thing. I just wanted to mention one thing that I forgot. A lot of people ask if you have to provide fire sprinklers in the new rebuild. You do. You have to do fire sprinklers. Yeah, and solar. The fire sprinkler, by the way, is under what's called NFPA 13D for single family. That stands for domestic. But it's like it's a very low level set of fire sprinkler system. It's basically just like piping, like another water pipe in your house. It's not like a commercial sprinkler system.
It still adds like $10,000.
Yeah, it's not, if that, so.
I read that yesterday they waived the solar.
If that's happened, I'm unaware, okay, but it's possible, yeah.
They did, yeah.
Okay, great.
Newsom did it at that conference they had
Excellent.
yesterday.
Oh, the CEQA and that.
And that's
So-
the thing,
so-
every day
so
we
there
wake
was a
up,
bill?
something changes.
Yeah, absolutely,
It's an
yeah.
exciting time in California.
There was an initial bill immediately right after the disaster to get CEQA waived and to get the requirement for solar waived. But if she's saying that did get passed, that would be.
That'd be great.
news.
I mean, look, honestly, I have solar in my house. It cut down my electric bill in half, so I'm a big fan of it, but if you're on a very fixed budget, then it might make, if you can get rid of it, it might make sense to do so.
With the sprinklers that we have, that kind of wind and fire, the sprinklers wouldn't save your house.
No, not at all, but because if there's no water pressure, like, what good is that gonna do, right? However, there are sprinkler systems that are foam-based, okay, that you can actually put on the exterior of your house, which I would do if I were in your shoes. And I'm kind of recommending that for a lot of my clients, is part of the fire kind of strengthening of the house is to have an exterior foam system. But again, it could be expensive, so,
Yeah, we had sprinklers on our roof, which were running when we left, and our house burned.
Yeah, it won't do any good, like in a.
Because Altadena, where we were, lost water pressure.
Sure.
Something we didn't discuss much today, which probably is something we need to discuss, is home hardening. Would
Yes.
any one of you wanna get into home hardening?
So, yeah, there are a few things that I'm doing. One is we're trying to use exterior materials that are fire resistant, okay? Hardy board, or fiber cementitious types of exterior cladding, even exterior masonry, we're doing that. Okay, so this can get super granular, okay, but eave overhangs, we're trying to eliminate those, but it creates a problem with the building code. The building code requires that your roof be vented, okay, for air. But if you're getting rid of those eaves, and how do you vent your roof? You have to vent it mechanically, okay? So there's a little bit of a contradiction in the building code that forces you to do one thing. It wants you to have eave overhangs and vents, but fire resistance doesn't want you to do that, And then also looking for Class A roofing systems that are super high fire resistance. The best are like Spanish tiles and concrete tiles and stuff like that, but those can get expensive and heavy. Metal panels can be somewhat more fire resistant, but metal tends to melt in fire, so, you know, in a high fire, it's not gonna really do too much. But we're looking at Class A roofing systems.
What's the trade-off between hardening and earthquake preparedness?
Oh, there is no trade-off there. So the earthquake preparedness is based in, is 100% basic building code, okay? You have to have shear reinforcement for your exterior walls, and you have to have interior and exterior shear walls no matter what, okay? So you have to do that at an absolute base level. The fire hardening, you know, that goes towards money, you know, I think that all comes to money. Because it's gonna be a lot cheaper to do stucco siding than it would be to do hardy boards, you know.
We got a question for Consumer Affairs. Is there any additional protections for the residents because it's this type of disaster?
Additional protection, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you as far as that. I could only talk about in general, for example, consumer protections as U.S. entering contracts, making a purchase, and so forth. But as far as the actual material, labor, craftsmanship, and so forth, I can't.
No, meaning protections for the consumer from against contractors and others. I mean, are there additional protections, additional rights that they may have because they're disaster victims when it comes to dealing with unscrupulous contractors?
Unfortunately, that I'm aware of, no, other than make sure that you report it, whether it be to us, contractors they license for it, or your local law enforcement.
By the way, you can check the state, the California Secretary of State website if you need to find out if your architect and your structural engineer are licensed. I mean, they should offer that, but just in case, you can always check that website.
I had a follow-up on the fire hardening.
Yes.
Between hardy plank and stucco.
Yes.
I kind of figured they were pretty much comparable.
No, not at all.
Please tell me more.
Because the hardy board is a cementitious system, okay? So it's got, you know, it's basically fiber cement, so it has a much greater fire resistance. Or it's called a flame spread rating, has a much better flame spread rating than stucco.
Really? Because
Yeah.
like our house had 3/4 inch of basically concrete on the exterior of it. That was the stucco. I would think that would be.
Well, but stucco doesn't have the same cementitious makeup, you know, that fiber cement boards do. I'm no expert on that, by the way.
Yeah, because our stucco walls stood.
Did they? Okay, well,
The
that's
fire
good.
was gone.
Yeah.
Studs were burned out.
The stucco
was
stayed.
still there. Turned
Okay.
paint, but it was still
Yeah,
there.
but I mean, yeah, just the basic testing is the flame spread
Okay.
rating on fiber cement is way better than stucco. you know?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And this is why we say, you know, architects are the main people to start this entire thing. So don't wait, we would highly recommend, you know, find an architect. If you don't have one, just like Aaron, we have about 15, 20 architects we don't mind, you know, introducing you guys to, and it's really important because they know a lot. And that's why I'm not an architect, you know, they're just at a whole different level, and it really takes time for them to understand there's so much to consider in for you it might be a simple house, but there's a lot that goes into it. So don't wait, and, you know, get an architect going and start submitting your plans at least to stay in there, because it's gonna get pretty interesting in a couple months.
Okay, I know that we're talking about materials that we can use and everything, but I am concerned, there are materials that, you may not know this, but I just need to ask, that the insurance companies will allow them to insure you if you live in what they say, the path of the fire or something of that sort. Because, you know, I'm just thinking, if you build back and then with materials or what have you, and then will the insurance company still say, because you live at that particular site, it doesn't matter with the materials or anything, that you still can't get insured?
I sat in on a panel once that answered this question. There was an insurance broker there, and he said that having fire hardy materials may not get you a discount on insurance or may not get you better coverage on insurance, but hopefully it'll stop the house from burning down if it were to happen again. So I think that question of whether or not insurance companies are going to insure or offer discounts on insurance because of the materials we chose, I think that is something that we're gonna have to wait to see how, like, the political level manages that, right? Because, but I think, you know, you could talk to, for LA Fire Justice probably has a lot of answers about that, because there are companies who work specifically on fire areas, and all these fire areas have gone through this, especially in California. So I think you will see insurance have to give coverage, but yeah, the materials I don't think are necessarily going to or not impact.
I'll chime in there. What it's gonna require legislation. This is what it's gonna be. You had a lot of the insurance companies already pulling out of California and putting people on a statewide plan. I think there's a possibility that we may self-insure. I know that it's similar to how we got rid of pre-existing conditions in in our healthcare. It's going to be something like that. But there's gonna be a legislation, because if they're requiring, your mortgage company's requiring you to have fire insurance, but you can't get fire insurance, I mean, how are we functioning? So it may become a statewide plan, and everybody may become on a state plan. Now, I'm not telling you what it's going to be, but I can guarantee you, by the time this is all said and done, possibly in the settlement, that there may be some form of, none of us will have private homeowners insurance. It may be a state plan across the board. And they will address this underinsured issue, because, no one's calling us saying, hey, you're underinsured. Only the mortgage companies only insure up to what their mortgage is. No one's protecting us. And the insurance company knew that we were underinsured. So the state is going to fix this issue.
I just have a quick question. Shifting gears a little bit to the budget management piece, is it recommended or is it common practice that when subcontractors are involved, the payment actually is made to both the prime and the sub, or do you not suggest that? Because we've been talking about like the mechanical liens and how you avoid mechanical liens, right? And so if you want to ensure that the sub actually got paid, then if you make the check payable to both the prime and the sub, basically the prime needs, you know what I mean? Like the sub is basically signing, and that is our.
Right, so that's an option that you have, is to pay with joint checks made payable to both contractor, subcontract, supplier, to ensure proper payment and make sure that they also get paid. And then you could also request a waiver, right, to make sure that they confirm that they were actually paid. This way you can avoid and prevent any future claims from being filed against your home.
And let me just add on to that specifically. What'll happen is, under the normal circumstance, when you pay a general contractor and they pay their sub, the sub is supposed to do what's called a release of lien, okay? That's an actual form that they fill out along with the GC, where they sign that, this has been paid and we release our lien rights. So, and you're well within your rights to always demand or require that there's a release of lien after every check.
And it doesn't take them long to do it. It's very quick.
I have a basic question, considering everything that was taught and everybody that is involved, rules and regulations. How is the estimate for a project with 3 bedrooms and 3 baths? How much money would we need to put up to do this, considering what we said right here?
So it really depends, it depends on the budget. I mean, there's some that only have 500, for example. So with that 500, we have to figure out how to fit the maximum of whatever we can do within that budget. So I would say there is no real set price, because every lot, every house has its own variations. Some clients are actually saying, instead of a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, you know, I'd rather lose a bedroom and do 2 bigger bedrooms. You know, maybe that's a architectural thing too. They're willing to sacrifice for what they can, what budgets they have. So I wouldn't really be able to give you like a set number of this much all the time, because it's not. It really depends on your lot, it depends on so many variations. But, you know, I would say initially, once you speak to an architect, then understanding what you can do, then you can actually get an actual number, close number, to what things can cost.
There is a standard range that we're hearing for your kind of standard builds. I'm not talking 12-foot ceilings and things. For a regular craftsman, a regular ranch home and things of that nature, what we're seeing is kind of a price per square foot, and those don't include your finishes, because the finishes make the difference on how expensive a home can be. There's a builder grade, there's standard finish, there's decent finishes, and you're kind of hearing this price per square foot. But it is critical to ask the further question, because some of these contractors want to tell you a low price, and then you find out what you're actually getting and how much more it's going to cost and what you're going to need. Like I said, you want a home with doors and windows and things of that nature. So there should be a standard range. I don't know if I'm liberty to state what that is, but there's a reasonable consensus. I'm hearing as low as $300 to $450 per square foot, and then you're going to have your finishes. So there are some groups, we've negotiated some where we've got you all the way down, because we're utilizing the collective purchasing, and we're making sure that those homes have refrigerators, dishwashers, everything with a turnkey.
Yeah.
So there is that range, but there's a group with some great hands back there, and I want to get to them.
So, are parking requirements incorporated into an architect's design?
Well, yes, well, okay, there's no requirement there, just so you know. Like, there's no requirement whatsoever in terms of fire hardening for any house. You know, you don't have to do that. Even if it's the only thing is if you're in a very high fire hazard severity zone, there are certain things you have to do to your eave overhangs and stuff like that, but ultimately the house does not have to be fire resistant, other than just having fire sprinklers in it, okay?
It could be a wooden house.
What's that?
It could be a wooden house.
Yeah, no, and they are. I mean, most of the fire rebuilds are gonna be wood framed, you know? Nobody's gonna do them in metal or concrete, it's just too expensive. You know?
So most of these building materials from our older homes, most of these building materials now are common pre-hardened. You know, the materials that we built with when our homes were built are different than what they are now. And so a lot of them have built into them a lot of fireproofing and things of that nature. What you wanna look at are the ember-proof vents, because it was actually the vents that burned all of our homes down. They got into the attic had a lot of dust and lit up these homes. The homes that didn't get, because that stucco, kind of knocks off a little bit of that fire, but once it get into the vent, that's one, the Class A roof and the double pane windows and the setbacks. A lot of us build trees and plants right next to our home. Those caught fire, these palm trees burnt down the houses. So there are cheap ways, cost-effective ways to home harden without spending a lot on the Class A roof. We're working with the state to get the state to pay for that final upgrade between a C and an A. Of course, it's all about funding, but we're fighting to get them to cover the cost of the Class A roof.
Two-part question. You've already started working with a builder, and they sold you on the project about 3D rendering. But once we get the 3D rendering, you don't like it, what type of changes can be made there? How easily are those changes able to be made? And then the second part of the question is, when we're fighting, a lot of this is geared towards Los Angeles and Altadena, but there's people who have lost their house in Pasadena, which means the legislation laws are a little different. Permitting processes and procedures are a little different. So what are some of the differences between Altadena's rebuild and Pasadena's rebuild? Because Pasadena is usually left out when we're talking. We're always talking about Altadena.
I kind of want to jump to the first question. What you're talking about, architectural 3D space or after?
Architectural.
Oh, then that would be a.
Well, I mean, it depends on the.
Because we come after.
Yeah, I mean, so like, it depends on the architect, so like a lot of architects will charge like a super low fee, but then if you try to make changes down the road, they'll just start change ordering you to death.
Yeah.
So that's the thing you want to try to avoid. Most good, like honest architects will include, doing a lot of iterations with you during the process in their fee, because particularly when you work on a single family home with somebody, it is very iterative. You kind of work on it a lot, you make changes, you try stuff out and so on. So if their situation is like they're just one and done, and then you try and make changes down the road, you could get yourself into some trouble, you know, where the architect, or if you're paying the contractor for the architect, they might try to change order you for that. So I would look at the contract that you have and see if that includes making changes, you know, and have a discussion with them about that. You know?
It's already gotten to the point where it's already been permitted.
Yeah, so if it's been permitted, the question is what changes do you want to make at this point? If it's just finishes and you're not redesigning any of the rooms or making substantial changes, then it shouldn't be that big of a deal to do that now, you know? If you make any substantial changes to it, then you could open yourself up to some degree of change orders.
Because there's only a gazillion types of everything out there, so, you know, that's where people start getting lost and like, oh my God, well, what if this, and then what, this would look better, maybe I would want, because they see things every day, thanks to social media and Google, they go, oh, this would look cool here, and that would look cool, so it's an evolving process after it's been submitted and permitted. Things change all the time, so that's where after we come in and we're like, okay, here's the plans, let's, you know, start doing 3D versions of this space in the kitchen, and oh, you want different furniture here, because on their end, the software they use, it's not super fast, it takes a long time to render, right, Aaron? It takes a while, yeah. So,
although honestly,
they're two different worlds, I would say, you know?
I would say though that AI is changing rendering speed substantially.
Yeah.
Let me answer the second question to some degree. So I haven't done any Pasadena fire rebuilds yet. I have done projects in Pasadena though, and I'm very familiar with their building department, and they're very difficult, extraordinarily difficult. And they just kind of don't care, right? They're not there to try to help you, right? However, I would think, okay, and I don't know this because I haven't done any rebuilds with them, I would think though that they do have you know, try to create some kind of process or do put something in place to try to help you out. But that's all I can speak to it. I don't have any experience with fire rebuilds with them. So.
Yeah, I was just looking through my notes. It's pretty much the same, you know, Pasadena has not got the same amount of attention. We did like a sit down with them. I want to say I'm looking at this email, you know, all the way back in February, and like I don't think we've checked back in with them. At that point, though, they were honoring a lot of the same legislative pieces that you're hearing about, the 110%, for example. All their rules were pretty much the same. Basically, yeah, I mean, the process is largely going to be the same regardless of where you're at when it comes to permitting and approvals, at least, and obviously like building, construction, all that. It's going to be sit down with them, have a preliminary discussion. If you have any documents you can bring with you, that's going to be the first step. If you have a design professional that you can bring as well, that's even better. But the best thing is always sit down with them, and just so you know, this process is the same regardless of whether it's a fire or a commercial building or whatever. It's always that we meet with the city first, we talk about our property, we ask pointed questions. Are there any red flags? Do you guys see anything I should be concerned about? Is there anybody I should talk to next? And figure that out. And if you want to have 1, 2, 3 meetings, you know, until you feel truly satisfied, you know, you're not paying them for that time. And especially for the fire rebuilds, not only are you not paying them for that time, but they want to talk to you because they want to get the information out. So I would say, you know, don't be shy with going down there. And if it takes you a couple times to figure it out, like, you know, I've dealt with so many homeowners, and that's why people hire us often, because it can be really burdensome and stressful. You go down and you talk to somebody and they say, well, you got to go talk to the guy over there. And that's the beauty of those one-stop centers, is when they say you got to go talk to the guy over there, he's literally over there. You know, it's not like you have to drive 10 miles down the road and you get there and they're like, sorry, the office is closed, come back Thursday. You know, so go in there and talk to them and you know, see what they can offer you as far as information goes. But generally, every jurisdiction, because we're talking in Malibu, City of LA, LA County Coastal, LA County Altadena, talk to Pasadena, it's like the same language, different dialects. Everybody's
In Malibu, their agreements have been all waived, right?
Say it again?
They don't have permit fees in Malibu, right?
They're city of LA, so they're considered.
No, Malibu's totally different. Malibu, I'm not sure if they waived. City of LA currently is trying to solidify waiving their permit fees. I'd have to check on Malibu. The last time I met with them, I don't think that's the case, but, and obviously, I guess it's probably tough for you because Pasadena's not waiving fees, anything I've heard.
Pasadena is having a, council meeting on July 14th.
And are they, do you know if they're gonna be discussing that?
Waiving the fees, this will be their second meeting.
Okay,
So if anybody wants
so
to
there you
go.
go, sir. So she said Pasadena, July 14th, the council meeting, so make sure you get all your friends there because the voices really do matter. One bad voice can sink like 5 good voices, so numbers really help.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me?
Sure.
It's probably for this gentleman here. I'm in the process of trying to find it. I had an architect last year, this was for another project. Do you see a difference between this, if you're old school and you do everything by hand versus, I'm assuming you do everything on a computer?
Yeah, we do everything on a computer. So, look, doing things by hand is slower, okay? And less, I'm trying to be diplomatic about this.
They're speaking, they might have like an initial scribble on,
Right.
to get an idea.
So, look,
Maybe that's what you mean.
it's very outmoded way of doing things, okay? But I started off doing everything by hand. I love drawing by hand, like I love, right? But it's just, if you wanna get done quickly, like going old school and having somebody do it by hand is just gonna be too slow. It's just gonna be too slow. And also, you might run into this problem where, you know, the person doing it by hand might not be charging that much, but they're gonna be like, hey, I drew this once, go build it, leave me alone, you know? Like, and that usually happens with
And we moved to, and we passed, at least in Altadena, AI approval so that we could speed things through.
That's
So it's
true.
extremely complex to take hand-drawn plans and hand to the AI. You may end up in a different department, the older school department. So, to rebuild 10,000 structures, we're going to have to think in the future.
Yeah.
Is everybody tired yet?
Can I get some phone numbers from you too?
So I've got business cards. Again, I'm not trying to sell myself, okay? I just want that to be clear. I'm not here to get work, okay? But I do have business cards. If you want one, I'll give them to you. It's not a problem.
Yeah, and anything you guys need, feel free, you know, that's what we're all here for. Just let us know, even after here, just contact us, you know. Freddie's usually awake 24/7, from what I realized.
So we'll be back Tuesdays, all right, we're gonna do this. Next time, we're gonna have Department of Planning here. We're gonna have some amazing additional architects here, so, you know, just keep coming, keep learning. The Alta Design Center is open for you. You can get my number, Samira. If you want us to harass anybody for you, we're pretty good at that. We're good at organizing, if you need us to help organize Pasadena homeowners. But it's truly gotta be your advocacy. You gotta fight for yourselves. You gotta be your own attorneys. You gotta protect each other. Don't hoard resources. If you hear something great, let someone know about it. If you found a good deal on the TV, let someone know about it. But we're gonna have to rebuild our community back together. So I wanna thank all the speakers, I wanna thank all of you, you guys shrugged this through, you guys are fantastic. Hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday.
That's awesome.
And if anyone wants to come, July 14th.